Hey guys, what is up? Steven here to do another film room for you guys. I've got 6 plays today that I want to dive into, uh, and it's not pretty. This is not going to be a fun film breakdown. This is not going to be a breakdown where it's like, wow, look at how many cool shit the Chargers are doing. Wow, look who's playing awesome. No, this is going to be all the bad shit that I saw from Sunday. This was by far the worst offensive line performance that I have watched this season. It was disgusting, and frankly, Tom Telesco, Frank Smith, Joe Lombardi, and Brandon Staley all deserve a lot of blame for what happened on Sunday. That being said, gonna take a deep breath. And we'll have fun. I love breaking down film. I love talking about all of this stuff. Giving an insight into what it's like from an offensive line perspective. But that being said, it was not pretty. So, going to talk about the film, and then at the end, we'll talk about some larger scale breakdowns of kind of what I think is really going wrong with the Chargers offense. So, before we get started, have to give a shout out to our guys over at Quest Designs and the Backroom Collection. If you've been a listener of the show, you know that you've heard me talk about both of those guys. Fellow Chargers fans doing some great work for us. As you can see over my right shoulder, I have a canvas from the Backroom Collection that represents the Chargers rookies, players that I really like and love to watch. And then I don't have my Quest design sticker, but you've seen those popping around on Twitter. So both of those guys doing great work. Their links will be in the description of this video, as well as the discount codes that you can use for 10% off. I know with Christmas coming up, that is a great way to spread some Christmas cheer for the Chargers fan in your life. Again, those will be in the description below. And as always, please like, subscribe, and turn those notifications on. We do really appreciate all the support here on YouTube. That being said, let's dive into this film. I'm going to make myself smaller, the film bigger, as I always do. And this is going to start us off, and it really was the theme of the day. So, as we all know, Matt Filer was unable to play in this one, and Senio Clemente was inserted in the starting lineup at left guard. And as I have talked about several times on this show, reps and chemistry and how many times that you have played next to somebody, all of that matters in the offensive line. When I was growing up playing offensive line in high school, my coach would always point out that, if you're going to punch somebody, you have to have a strong fist. If you punch somebody with your index finger up, right, then you're not going to punch very hard. You're probably going to break your damn finger, break your damn finger. And that's like the simplest form of how I can explain, or how anybody can explain, the importance of everybody being on the same page along the offensive line. When you have somebody who has never played next to another somebody, then you're going to have problems. And of course, when you come together in the offseason, that's when a lot of those problems are solved. That's what Corey Linsley talked about early on. I'd never played next to Ode Ibushi or Matt Filer, excuse me. Had a brain fart there for a second. But because they had all offseason to practice together, they were able to gel. And the first 5 games when Ode Ibushi was healthy, the Chargers offense was humming. Now you have a backup right tackle. Granted, he's played a lot more, so now he has the chemistry and stuff like that worked out, right? The backup right guard. Now you have a backup left guard. So you're down 3 starters along the offensive line. And what happens? You're just not connected. There's no synergy. And we're going to see this on this very first play of the film breakdown. It's a very basic stunt that the Chargers do. It's a basic end DT stunt. The defensive end, in this case Jonathan Cooper, is going to shoot across Rashawn Slater's face, and then number 90, McTelvin Agim, is going to loop around. Very simple, very basic. Unfortunately for the Chargers, you have Senio Clemente, who is a very subpar player, lined up to Rashawn Slater, a rookie. They have never played a snap together, not a single time. They didn't have any practice reps in the offseason. They didn't have any preseason snaps during the preseason, nothing. So you have a major disconnect here on this basic stunt that shows a severe lack of communication on the part of the Chargers offensive line. And McTelvin Agim has a free shot at Justin Herbert. anytime you see in this angle, if you see the numbers of the guard like this, then you know the Chargers offensive line is in a bad spot. When I saw this kind of thing happening, and it happened a lot, both with Schofield and with Senor Clemente, I wanted to throw my computer at the screen. It was such a hard watch. I felt like I was watching last year's Patriots game, and I said this to Tyler and Alex, because the Chargers offensive line was struggling with the most basic concepts. I don't have the numbers with me, but the Broncos barely blitzed at all in this game. Barely at all. I maybe counted 4 or 5 blitzes max. So all they did was just the most basic stunts that I can work with my middle schoolers on every single day in practice, because it's the only thing people know how to do. You cross, you flash, and then you loop around. It's extremely simple stuff that you rep all the time. The problem is that you don't have any reps with Clemente and Rashawn Slater. And what happens is you make a player like McTelvin Agim, who I liked coming out of last year's draft, but he had played in like 2 games for the Broncos more than 10 snaps this year. And against the Chargers, he looked like fucking Aaron Donald. It was ridiculous. And this play is one play, and people will always say like, "Oh, this is the one play, like you can paint any picture." This shit was happening all game long. And it started right from the get-go. This was like the 5th play of the game. And it just kept on happening and happening and happening. And sure, Justin Herbert does his job here. He gets rid of the ball early, and it's a completion. But when you are a quarterback and your offensive line is letting you get hit early and often, it's going to have major ramifications going on throughout the game. And we'll get to some of those later. The other issue with having an offensive line like this is that there's the run game cannot get back on track. The run game without Matt Filer was abysmal. I said on Sunday's show that I felt like it was okay, that the Chargers, were still able to get some push. I was dead wrong watching the film. The film painted such an ugly picture for the Chargers. And the thing I will say about that, actually, I'll save that for after the 2, because I have 2 running plays here. Excuse me, I have 3 running plays here. So I didn't really focus in on the pass blocking that much. But so this first play, you're going to have a split zone look, which means you're going to have 2 double teams at the point of attack with Corey Linsley and Senor Clemente and Schofield and Storm Norton. And then you're also going to have Trey McKitty next to Storm Norton and Jalen Guyton next to him, who's in charge of blocking Justin Simmons. So Josh Palmer on the other side is going to block the nickel corner. So I'm not counting him as a part of the box. So you have 7 Chargers blockers with 5 offensive linemen, the tight end, and the receiver. And if you look at this Broncos front, you have the 4 defensive linemen, the 2 linebackers, and then Justin Simmons. So you have 7 on 7. Theoretically, that should give you an advantage if you're the Chargers, right? Because you're not going up against a heavy box. You're going up against a relatively light box. However, the Chargers are, how shall I say this, lacking in the run department up front. Right now in this group, you have Lindsey and Slater, who are both really good run blockers, but they're not exactly people movers, right? Like they're technicians. And so without Matt Filer and without Ode Ibushi, you don't have any people movers. There's no connect. And so everything has to be sound technique. And on Sunday, the technique was piss poor at best. So diving into this play, Schofield and Norton are responsible for that defensive tackle, that 3 technique, and 41 Kenny Young. Linsley and Clemente are responsible for Mike Purcell and 56 Baron Browning. Neither of the linebackers get touched. That's a huge problem for blocking for your running backs. You have to be able to get hats on hats. And what happens here is there's an extreme disconnect. Look at this angle that Storm Norton is taking. Because this is a combo block, you have to be shoulder to shoulder here so that Norton can just slide in as Michael Schofield moves up to the linebacker. The problem is that Storm Norton is taking this block as if he is responsible for the linebacker. He's taking on the shoulder, and then it looks like he's going to be taking on number 41, Kenny Young. That's not how this play is supposed to work. The play is supposed to work as what I call with my lineman a scoop block, where Norton takes over the defensive tackle and Schofield takes on the linebacker. It's relatively simple stuff, right? But Schofield ends up trying to do the Spider-Man thing where he has both defensive players here, and it just ends up as a complete mess. And then, of course, the defensive tackle and Kenny Young make that play. It's just terrible, terrible technique on every single level of those two. The other issue here, which it didn't really hurt the play, but Senio Clemente stays on this block way too long. He still is attached to Mike Purcell. He never gets off onto the linebacker. So when you have Corey Linsley attached like this, to me, this means that Senio Clemente is in the wrong and that he should be getting the linebacker. Then, of course, you have Jalen Guyton, who I've given some praise to, right, in previous things. Look at this fucking block. Nobody except for Trey McKitty and Rashawn Slater are attached to their correct assignments. And so you have a advantage run with 7 blockers and the running back against 7 defensive players for the Broncos, and you get 1 fucking yard. 1. This is awful at every single level, and it was consistently happening. Okay, maybe 2. Whatever. Man, I'm telling you guys, I was so mad watching this film. It was ridiculous. All right. Next play. If you watched my breakdown last week from against the Steelers, one of the things that I loved seeing from last week is the Chargers' use of counter plays. It's a great way to get your running back an advantage, gives him gives him a runway, gives him nice cutback angles. Counters are great solutions to amplifying and jump starting your run game. The problem again is that you don't have any people movers in this lineup. And then you have so many subpar players in this lineup. So you have Trey McKitty, who I think is a positive run blocker, but he's still a rookie. As your jumbo offensive lineman, Matt Fowler is now gone. Your jumbo offensive lineman is now Trey Pipkins. Woo, so fun. Then you have Storm Norton. Then you have Michael Schofield. And then you have Senio Clemente. What could go right? Oh, nothing, apparently. So, again, this is a very simple concept. What you're going to have are a bunch of combo blocks. And so the Broncos are going to kind of stuff the A gaps here because they're expecting an inside run. So basically what you're going to have happen here is Trey McKitty is responsible for Bradley Chubb. Storm Norton and Michael Schofield are responsible for 95 and 41. And then Corey Linsley is responsible for cutting off that Mike Purcell. And then Senio Clemente and Steven Anderson are going to pull across the formation. Now, when you have pullers that go across the formation, they have to problem solve on the fly. So theoretically, if everything goes well, they're going to pull across and get the second linebacker and either Patrick Surtain or Justin Simmons. So then you have a one-on-one matchup with Austin Eckler against either Surtain or Simmons, whoever the puller does not get. The problem is, however, that Kenny Young, on a play where you have 4 blockers to his side, is going to get a free run. Nobody is going to block Kenny Young on this play. No one touches him. Schofield doesn't get him. Trey Pipkins doesn't get him. Schofield goes for Browning. That's fine if you're so connected that Trey Pipkins is getting 41. So because no one touches Kenny Young, now you have Trey McKitty who loses his block. Now Steven Anderson or Senio Clemente has to help him. Excuse me. Then you have Steven Anderson pulling, going, I don't know, Justin Simmons and Kenny Young. What the hell am I supposed to do? So what happens? You get Austin Eckler at a loss because you have so many subpar players in this lineup that there's just no room. Counter is supposed to be a gimme run play, and it was a gimme run play for the Broncos. And again, you look at this box that the Broncos are running here. It's not like they're stuffing 8 guys in the box. So I guess they kind of are here. But you still have an advantage, right? So you have the 2 tight ends, you have the extra offensive linemen, and then you have the 5 actual offensive linemen. So you have 8 blockers in here. 8 against the Broncos defensive players. And how many of these Chargers blockers win? Okay, Corey Linsley, good. Rashawn Slater, that's kind of a tough assignment, so I don't really hold him there. And look at this shit. Trey Pipkins does not end up blocking a single person, not one. And then you have Trey McKitty losing, which forces Senor Clemente to lose, and then which that forces Steven Anderson to lose. So the Chargers run game was an absolute disaster. And then still have one more play that really kind of accentuates this even further. So this is a basic inside zone check. Okay. So Herbert checked to this run play. You have the 5 offensive linemen and you have 5 players in the box. That's an advantage check that Herbert takes to hand off to Austin Eckler because he thinks, hey, like this is a smart play. This is a good way to get the run game going. And it goes to shit. So again, because you are so unfamiliar with the player next to you, there's no synergy and there's no chemistry whatsoever. So you have essentially what happens here is 3 players are blocking number 95. I don't know who number 95 is, but I know for sure that he does not merit 3 players on him at once. So you actually get a good rep from Storm Norton and Michael Schofield here on this play. And then because you have 3 players on one essentially, and then you finally get Corey Linsley to come up to Baron Browning. But then look, Senor Clemente loses after the other 2 get off of the block. So it was such a disaster of a run game performance. And if that were the only thing that went wrong, that's fine. You know, you can compound that if you're throwing the ball really effectively and making plays. But they weren't because Justin Herbert was under pressure all game long. It was literally atrocious. So I charted 10 pressures allowed by Senor Clemente. Some of them were like those basic stunts that I showed you earlier, and that could go against Rashawn Slater if you want to be picky. But I charted it to Senor Clemente because at the end of the day, he's the one who has to pass the playoff. He's the veteran, right? He should be expected to be able to make those kind of plays. I also charted 6 pressures for Michael Schofield. And this is where I'm going to talk about Michael Schofield because Michael Schofield, since the bye, since I have started charting these pressures, so that's 5 games, has allowed, what did I say? So essentially, over the last 5 games, Michael Schofield allowed 3.4 pressures per game. He allowed 5. This is my charting. This is different than Pro Football Focus, right? Like this is me. I'm gonna look at things differently than whoever charts at Pro Football Focus, right? So I gave him 5 pressures against the Patriots, 2 against the Eagles, 1 against the Vikings, 3 against the Steelers, and 6 against the Broncos. Okay, and he's allowed 2 sacks in that time frame. So that's a 3.4 average per game over the last 5 games, which would equal out to a pace of 57.9 pressures over a 17-game season. 50 fucking 7. That's how bad this guy has been. And they signed this guy off the street because they felt like Brendan Hymus was not ready. Because Brendan Hymus was their only backup guard at the start of the season. That is an extreme failure of roster building in the highest regard. Then you have Senio Clemente come in again off the street, off the practice squad of the 49ers. And what does he do in his first start? He allows 10 pressures, 2 of which were sacks, an additional 2 were hits on Justin Herbert. 10 pressures, you guys. 10. And this is against defensive tackles. This isn't like Storm Norton allowing 8 pressures against Micah Parsons and Randy Gregory and all those guys on the edge who are legitimate dogs off the edge. This is against defensive tackles. And it's not like Derek Shelby was walking through that door. You know, Draymond Jones is a good player, but, you know, McTelvin Agim, number 95. I don't even know his name right now. So that to me is an extreme failure by Tom Telesco and Brandon Staley, who absolutely has a role in building this roster, at constructing a roster that effectively protects Justin Herbert. If you know going in that you do not trust Brendan Hymus this year, that your plan is to give him a redshirt season, because Danny Popper did point out he hasn't played guard since high school. If that's your plan for Brendan Hymus, that's fine. I totally understand that. But you have to create a better alternative plan for when injuries happen. You can't have Brendan Hymus be your primary backup to start the season, and then when things go to shit, you have to sign someone off the street. If you like Brendan Hymus enough to draft him and be patient enough to give him a redshirt season, essentially, then you have to have a better alternative plan. That means either drafting a better prospect guard earlier that same year, or signing somebody else, or I don't know, maybe drafting somebody in 2019 or 2020. Like this, the way that Tom Telesco has built up this offensive line, like I give him a lot of credit for drafting Slater, signing the other 3 players this year. But he looked at that, okay, we have the start offensive line good, we're set, we're fine. No, that's an extreme mismanagement of your roster. And then again, Brian Bulaga, if he's healthy, great. But we all know that he's not going to be healthy all season. Like at best case, we knew that Brian Bulaga was going to play 12 games or something like that. And what do you do for his backups? You don't draft another tackle. You don't keep a Sam Tevi or something like that. You don't sign another swing tackle. You roll with a former XFL player, and he's been okay. But now the okay player is surrounded by 2 subpar guards. So, anyways, that's my rant about the roster. Brendan Hymus needs to be playing. They don't have a better plan. The plan needs to be to play Brendan Hymus, because these guys ahead of him, quote unquote, ahead of him, are awful. So I pray that Matt Filer is back soon. But if he is not, and Senio Clemente plays again against the Bengals, the Chargers are going to have a very similar result. And we're all going to be sitting here watching a 6-6 Chargers team, and it's going to be frustrating as hell again. So everybody wants to get mad at Joe Lombardi. He's the easy scapegoat. I get it. He's the offensive coordinator. But to me, the blame for this past performance goes strictly to Tom Telesco and Brandon Staley for mismanaging this roster. And then to a lesser extent, Justin Herbert, who we'll talk about right now. And I know people are not going to like this, but we have to be honest here. So this is later on in the fourth quarter. This is a play where Justin Herbert, if you remember, it's 3rd down. He's going to scramble on this play. And then they're going to run a 4th down choice route to Keenan Allen. And Keenan Allen's not going to catch the ball after this play. So then they get a turnover on downs. I think this is in the 3rd quarter, actually. My bad. But the thing here, this is where the ramifications come in that I was talking about when your quarterback is constantly under pressure, is that when he does finally get a clean pocket, he's not going to trust it. He's going to either trust his legs, or he's going to make a bad throw, or he's going to throw too early, or he's going to throw too late. It's just natural, right? Like we all saw Justin Herbert play amazing against pressure last year. It's not sustainable. The hope with a player who's great under pressure is that you minimize the amount of snaps under pressure and you give him outlets when there is pressure, that he doesn't have to feel like he has to play hero ball. That is not what's happening on Sunday. This is not what's been happening for the Chargers. When the pressure breaks, when the pressure comes in spades, Justin Herbert feels like he has to play hero ball. And I don't blame him for that. The problem is that the hero ball is not working. Okay. And Justin Herbert does deserve blame for that. So on this particular play, you have about 3rd and 6. The Chargers are going to run a go route with Jalen Guyton and a deep out route with Jared Cook. And then they're going to run a couple over routes with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams on the opposite side. Okay. So Herbert is looking left. You see him immediately look left to Jared Cook and Jalen Guyton. Right here, pocket is good. Okay. The pocket is good. Jalen Guyton is about to get open, and Jared Cook is about to get open. But because Justin Herbert does not trust his pocket, he escapes and leaks out of the pocket too early. He's already decided to run at this particular instance, where if he had decided to wait half a second longer, Jared Cook is open, Jalen Guyton is open, and you could even make an argument that Mike Williams at the top of the screen is coming open as well. And because he decides to run and slide, the Chargers end up with a fourth down. It's a fourth and manageable. Sure, you can argue that the Chargers should be able to convert this kind of play, but they don't, because Justin Herbert does not trust his pocket. Okay, so we'll go through this one live so you guys can see it, and then we'll rewatch it again. So again, as soon as Herbert starts to run, Jalen Guyton gets open on a deep go route. That could have been 6 points. Jared Cook, is open for a first down. It's a relatively easy pitch and catch that we've seen them do several times. Okay, so we're gonna go to the end zone here, so you guys know that I'm not bullshitting, that this is a clean pocket, because Justin Herbert, he doesn't trust it. Okay, again, nothing crazy from the Broncos, right? They're not going to blitz here. Just a relatively easy protection route. It's clean pocket. As soon as he starts to run, no defender is within 6 yards of him. This is as good as it was on Sunday. But because all the other instances he was under pressure, he doesn't trust this pocket and he runs. And I understand, like, you see the free lane, you want to get some yards with your legs, but you have to trust your pocket when it's there. And again, it's understandable that he didn't, but this is not a great quarterback decision by Justin Herbert. All right, this is the last play that I'm going to be talking about. Again, this is a instance where Justin Herbert makes a poor decision under pressure, and the pressure this time does exist because Michael Schofield gets whipped by Draymond Jones. So we'll watch that play back a little bit. This is a 3rd and long. No, I'm sorry. This is a 1st and 10. Excuse me. This is a 1st and 10. And the Chargers are going to try to get something going deep. Hey, look, a deep shot. I tweeted this pic. Tweeted the screenshot of this play out because people want to keep screaming at me that the Chargers don't have any deep shot designs. And that is false, you guys. That is not happening. All right. So on this particular play, you're going to have Mike Williams. I think this is a scissors route, if I'm not mistaken, because you have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams on the left side scissoring this way. Then you have a deep post route by Jalen Guyton on the opposite side. And then you have the out route, which I think is Trey McKitty, if I'm not mistaken. But you have these plays, right? And if this play holds up, if Michael Schofield can handle Draymond Jones, then you get Keenan Allen open on this corner route. You even have Mike Williams open on the post route or the dig route, whatever you want to call it. But again, this is a 15-yard play that if the protection holds up, it happens. He's looking at Keenan Allen, but because the pressure doesn't hold up, he has to escape. And then he makes a terrible decision throwing into double coverage to Mike Williams. So we'll see here. There's Draymond Jones creating the pressure. Storm Norton gets beat as well. And so Justin Herbert steps up in the pocket. And this throw needs to go to Trey McKitty. If you're going to throw this ball, Trey McKitty is open in the flat. This is first down, guys. This is first down. And he throws this ball into 2 defenders to Mike Williams. It's a bad decision by Justin Herbert. It's as plain as simple as that. And this was not the only instance where he was making a poor decision under pressure, because, he could have had, honestly, 5 or 6 interceptions on this day. It was not pretty. You throw this ball to Trey McKitty, you live to fight another day, or you run like you did on the other instance. There's, of course, a delicate balance there because he's about to get tackled. But this ball, if you're going to throw it to a player, it needs to go to Trey McKitty in the flat or out of bounds. Because if this was an interception, we'd be having a much more different conversation about Justin Herbert's day overall. So, man, that was unfortunately, there was not very many positive things that happened on Sunday. It just was a brutal day from the offense. And, maybe I was a little harsh on Justin Herbert on the show on Sunday, but he did not play well. And the offensive line did him no favors. The receivers did him no favors. The coaching staff did him no favors. It was brutal. And, if you want to talk about a criticism of Joe Lombardi and Frank Smith and all those guys who were involved in the game plan, when the offensive line can't hold up, you need to be more creative. You need to take pressure off of them. Ends arounds, screens, sweeps, jet sweeps, whatever you want to talk about. You need to create ways to take the pressure off of them because you don't have a group that you can trust. Mitchell Schwartz was on the Athletic Football Show talking about this. When your offensive line doesn't hold up, play callers tend to be conservative, restrictive, and calling the same stuff and calling the stuff that they know and that they trust will work. The problem is that you don't have a group that can make things work. So I only counted 2 or 3 plays where Justin Herbert was moved outside of the pocket. If that happens on Sunday, I'm going to be very, very upset about Joe Lombardi and Frank Smith, and I already am. So the game plan was not very good this game. It was not. I think Joe Lombardi called a fine game during the game. Like, the plays itself are fine. But I've said this before, the legitimate criticism of this staff is that when things go to shit, they do not know how to adjust on the fly. They don't know how to problem solve on the fly. They make great game to game adjustments. They make good game plans when things really working and clicking. But when things go to shit, they don't know what to do. And a lot of that is because they don't have a veteran coach on the staff. So I know a lot of people are going to be upset about how negative this film breakdown was, but I think a lot of it is warranted because what I watched on film was a disgrace to what Brandon Staley is trying to build here. He wants the identity of this team to be a line of scrimmage team, and they have 3 below average. They're not even below average. They're awful starters along the offensive line because they refuse to sign other guys. They refuse to play Brendan Hymus. Like, you cannot be a line of scrimmage team with this kind of group. At least with Brendan Hymus playing, you have the chance to do that. So this was a failure across many levels of the organization and team. And all you guys want to blame Joe Lombardi because he's the easy scapegoat but this is an identity crisis. This is a much more complex thing and reason and people to blame than just one person. This is not that simple, right? Like, this kind of inconsistency and up and down and production is not just firing one person and boom, everything is more consistent. This is a problem across the entire playing field of the Chargers organization. It was frustrating, guys, and I'm right there with you. I totally wish that this team were more consistent. I totally wish that in week 12 this were not a thing, but unfortunately it is, and it's going to continue on Sunday if Matt Filer can't play. So this is potentially a really, really bad matchup for the Chargers. It really is, and we'll dive into all of that later on the show. So hopefully you guys learned something. Hopefully you just if nothing else, shared my frustration, and we'll hopefully bounce back. That's the thing about the Chargers this year. They have shown the ability to bounce back from poor showings and poor outings, but it's just not pretty right now. So that's going to do it for me today. Stay tuned for our next episode, and we'll see you guys later. Thanks for all the support. Bye.